What is up, everyone? Welcome back to a not so episode of the Matthew Yamas podcast, which may not be the Matthew Yamas podcast for very long. So, this is not an official episode. This is not, obviously, there's no guest with me, but I am still in the same studio, my son's bedroom, my office. And I just wanted to use this Thanksgiving break to be just that, to take a break. Definitely have a lot of family gatherings that are happening. I'll be hosting. I have to go to something, a couple of things. So I just wanted, didn't want to make it complicated for the guests that I would have to bring on or for myself. And I thought, hey, there's an opportunity to announce some things, talk about how's it been going. And that's just what I'll be doing. So if you're into that, please continue listening. If not, I get it. You can totally tune into the next one. It's like, I'll have a guest on next week for the next episode. But if you're here and you're like, hey, I want to hear what's going on, stick around. Because I just want to say that I am so deeply, deeply grateful. So grateful for all of the support, comments, and just people saying, hey, what's the next episode going to be like? And I'm just thinking in my head, yeah, well, who am I to make another episode or to have a podcast or to bring on guests? And, as all that self-doubt kind of going through my head, it's just been a blessing to have people that are just, hey, are you going to release one this week? And what's it going to be about? I can't wait. I think the trailers have been a nice addition. Hopefully you've been enjoying that. It's been a little bit extra work staying up late on a couple of those. I think I want to keep that going, though. I feel like it gives people an opportunity to see what it's about if they're interested, and to maybe share just a short clip with somebody else so they can get an idea of what the episode is about before they jump in and, really commit to maybe 40, 50, an hour plus. I know some people like the hour plus episodes. Maybe some people don't. But just really grateful. I'm at 37 subscribers, which is honestly, I know in the era and trend of having thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of subscribers, I try to check myself and it's like, I'm really grateful for 37 subscribers. It's just cool to have any subscribers. And so for 37 people to be like, you know what, I'm a see, I want to keep on coming back to this, keep on seeing the content. I think it's great, especially because another thing I'm going to announce soon. I haven't really done social media. I haven't really spread it out to the masses. I've just allowed it to just for me to share it with some people that are kind of within my circle and text it out and share it, by, word of mouth, and still getting 1.2 thousand views on YouTube in total. So that includes shorts. The shorts are really popular. But that's a whole lot of views. I feel like with me, that doesn't really have a following to begin with. It's not like I'm coming from something else. And it sure helps though to have popular people like Mr. 818 himself, who has thousands of followers and is pretty popular. So it's been the most popular episode. I'll just, kudos to him. I know he's definitely earned that though. He's definitely worked hard for that, and he's been blessed with a great following and people who I think highly of the work he's doing and everything he's doing. So 1.2 thousand views. That's 87.5 hours watched. I don't even know what to think of that. That's just sounds crazy. I don't know. It's a lot of time listening to my voice and others' voices. Still kind of weird to me. Still kind of learning how to I don't know, just think of that. And then it's 50 plus listens on Spotify. It's on a couple of other platforms, but that's the majority. So just super cool. Again, I am building this thing in the sky, like an airplane, building an airplane. I think I've heard the metaphor of building an airplane in the sky. I had to just launch it. I think I mentioned it in episode 1. If you saw it, how it was more about me and obedient to what God had placed in my heart, my mind, and just saw a need for some of these conversations. So I hope they are allowing you to have conversations, maybe with your significant other, maybe with friends, to rethink some things and learn some things. I know I'm learning things, especially with the last episode about grief. And my week was like a theme of grieving things. And I can maybe touch on that later, but just staying on the process of building this podcast, I didn't have, the polished logo. I called it I'm calling it the Matthew Yamas podcast, not because I think like I'm this great podcaster. It's because I don't have another name, or I didn't have one, and I didn't want to keep spending time thinking of what's the perfect name. And when I'm already kind of feel like I'm ready to go with the first episode and I have things to talk about. So I'm not going to let just a logo and a name hold me back. I need to hit record. And yeah, in a time where I think a lot of us feel like when we listen to something, watch something, it has to be so polished and so, packaged neatly, that, hey, sometimes it's just getting something started and kicking it off. And I know there's been other ventures in my life where I maybe didn't start something because I kept on trying to polish it and then kind of ran out of momentum and didn't really do much with it. So, a couple of people have told me that me just kicking it off has been, helpful for them. So it's been helpful for me. It has been scary. It has been times where I'm like, should I continue? Can I really do another episode another week? And so far, God keeps providing the guests, the content, and I'm looking forward to more to come. So that brings me to the guests. So far, I've had 2 guests, Mr. Mario Mejia, 818. So grateful for that kickoff of having guests. It was just fun. I got to hear his story in a way that I've never really heard it from start to finish, at least from 818, his business standpoint and his career. So just to even have that is a blessing, I think. And it's just really fun to have and to share with people in his community. I knew that people were going to be interested in that story. They were going to want to hear it because they reach out to him often and ask questions and wonder about how to start auto detailing business. It is totally a thing that people start very often and go to classes for. So for them to hear kind of his journey, I knew it was going to be fun to hear. So I'm also grateful to Ken. Ken Jones came on talking about grief, something really heavy, but also in a way that I thought shed some new light, at least for me. And that kind of gave an example of where I saw this podcast going, in a place where I know I'm not the expert on probably any of these things. Yes, I have, about 14 years of experience under my belt of being a father and a husband. And that's great and there's things I've learned, but I do not know it all. And I'm very, very, very far from it. So I saw this podcast as like, why not? Because can be so inquisitive and so curious and maybe ask too many questions at times. Why not, in my own curiosity and in my own growth, ask people to come on that are going to build up my knowledge, help me to ask questions, and people, if they're interested in it, can just ride along and learn with me. So that's really the vision, a part of the vision of this podcast. So to see it starting to happen with Ken coming on talking about grief, I mean, I know I learned things that I didn't know or just hadn't really unpacked, even though I had already talked to him about the subject offline. So hopefully it was helpful to everybody as well. So just thank you again to Ken and Mario for coming on, being my first couple of guests. And just allowing yourself to be recorded on this podcast where I'm using the webcam of my iMac and a couple of $60 or so Amazon microphones that, to me, they sound okay. They sound fine. They're getting the job done. And yeah, that was really, I'm just grateful for that. So what I'd like to do this week, and something that I've noticed is needed, is that to get me from maybe to not needing to text everybody all the time. I don't know. I kind of get into my own head. Don't want to bother everybody with the text messages and WhatsApp messages and group chats. And I know group chats can get annoying sometimes. So I started building an Instagram page. I'm not into TikTok. And I may have to go that route too. But, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I was driving to go pick up my son. And I kept thinking about, man, I don't have any social media. I don't want to do social media. I think, even myself, I can get stuck on Instagram swiping, and wasting time. And I really tried to be mindful of that. And I have a lot of things blocked and notifications blocked. So I don't do that very often. And I think it can get kind of toxic, at least I know for me. And even YouTube Shorts, I can't block it, but I love YouTube. And YouTube Shorts can, be a time waster as well. So I'm like, man, why am I going to create shorts and this short form content? I'm just contributing, to that form of media that I don't think is too healthy. And I kept thinking that. And I was like, no, like I'm better than that. And I'm driving to go pick up my son, waiting in line to pick him up. And I felt like God telling me like, no, you are not better than that. In order to reach people that need to hear some of these messages, you need to meet them where they are. And I just really got convicted by that. It's like, yeah, I need to create some content that is short form, that's on these platforms. So I will be moving forward with that. I know that sounds like, duh, Matthew. But hey, I'm just being honest, open, and transparent about my process and how I came to that. And so, yeah, I created a couple of trailer shorts, and I'm creating an Instagram page. It'll be a lot easier to just post things there. It'll come up on social media. I will still be sharing with people, and I hope other people are sharing if they find it interesting and worth sharing. And I guess probably biggest of all is the new name. This is even hard for me to just put it out there, but it doesn't have to be set in stone. But I think once I change it, it feels like there's no going back. And this feels like, this name feels right. And so the new name of the podcast is not going to be the Matthew Amos Podcast. It is going to be Roots and Streams. I'll say that again. It is going to be Roots and Streams. So the Roots and Streams Podcast. I think Roots and Streams in itself, as just a thing or company, can be more than just a podcast. I don't know exactly where it would go, but I just see it being more than just a podcast. But for right now, it's just starting at the podcast. So you may be wondering why Roots and Streams. And I've talked this out with, a couple of groups, couple of people, and got a little bit of mixed feedback. For the most part, they liked it. And especially when I gave some context. So Roots and Streams, how did I get there? Well, I was doing a Psalms study, if you are familiar with the Bible. And if not, honestly, I'm still very new to it. I've been Christian my whole life, but a Bible reader just a couple of years. And I was doing some reading in the book of Psalms and wanted to study each psalm to see if I can find kind of, or just curate or condense a kind of a message to put on some clothing, actually, and to create shirts. And so I started doing that, and I really studied Psalm 1, the first psalm. And I noticed, wow, I just really like the imagery. And I've studied other parts of the Bible and saw the imagery in there about choosing to be choosing to plant yourself near streams of living water. And that idea and imagery just really stuck with me of just choosing to be a tree near like living water, like God's wisdom, God's blessings, his goodness. and how that is a choice, and how, we can choose to be close to his presence and his will, and just the things that he has for our life that are going to also bless other people. And that when you do that, you will have always be bearing fruit. You'll always be growing fruit from your tree. Um, and people will be reaping from it. And they'll be reaping from, your choice of being near that stream of living water. And the fruits that you'll be bearing and sharing with people are things like love and joy and patience and kindness that we hear of, the fruits of the Spirit, that Paul talks about. And so kind of just piecing those things together, I just really love that imagery, and thinking about, times in my life where I maybe wasn't rooted to that wisdom and near that stream. And I was reminded of a time that I think I've talked about on this podcast, but it kind of connects and brings even more context to the choice of this name of the podcast. And I was camping with family at in near the Kern River, or at the Kern River, right near it. And like I had mentioned earlier, if you are familiar or you're not familiar with the Kern, it is known to unfortunately take some lives every year. It can be a very dangerous stream. There's parts that are definitely calm and you can just swim around and no problem. But, the stream has parts where there are rapids, and ones that you can even, seemingly go down in a pretty sturdy river tube. And it was maybe about 4 or 5 years ago, probably about 5 years ago, where I was going with a group of other family members, and we're going down, tubing down, and there was this part where it's just kind of some rapids, and the rapids seemed safe enough, but it was also dangerous enough where we kind of knew we had at least a life vest. And, we will go down maybe a handful of times throughout our stay, and we're like, whoa, man, like, yeah, I kind of fell off a little bit, or, oh, it was scary. And we just kept riding that adrenaline rush of going down in the rapids. And I noticed that the water was getting lower and lower. And when it gets lower, the problem is that you can get stuck, because there's just plants and things growing out that you can get stuck on, maybe pop it, your raft while you're going down, and then you're stuck in the rapids and just got to go down with your body. And, but we were kind of at a little bit like further up the stream. Right before we were going to go home, we were doing some fishing right up the stream where those rapids were. And I just thought, hey, I'm gonna go down one more time, just for one more ride before we leave Kern. And didn't have any life vests on us because we were just all packed up already, but I had a tube, and I was like, oh, it's okay. I don't need a life vest. I'll be fine. We've been doing this. But I had already known, like, okay, the water's getting kind of low, but I really wanted to go down one more time. And my wife and kids and family members were there, and there was nobody there, though, to really grab me and speak wisdom into me, and in a firm way, and just a way that's like, hey, this is not a good idea. You don't want to do this right now. And I don't put that on anybody. I'm not saying anybody that was there, they should have done that. I'm not saying that. I am taking responsibility and saying I at that time, and I'm still working on this, didn't have anybody in my life that had that authority and like a mentorship, or just that I could really listen to that extent, where they could grab me by the arm and be like, Matt, this is not worth it. It's too dangerous at this point. You don't have a life vest. Let alone, we didn't have any helmets the whole time. It's like, no, it's not worth it. Yeah, you might be fine, but it's not worth that chance. You're not going to go. I didn't have anybody that was there in my life at the time that could really grab me and kind of shake me up and be like, no, dude, you have, too much on the line. So I decided to go down. And again, this is on me. If anyone's listening that was there that day, and I kind of feel myself getting emotional, so I might, and it's all good. It is not on you, and I'm not shooting on you, and this is on me. I just didn't have that in my life. And so I'm going down the raft. I'm going and, approaching the rapids, and my whole family can still see me. And I kind of hit a snag. And I was like, dang, I can't move. The raft's not moving. So I get up and try to like jump a little bit, like to kind of pull the raft off of the little like dead plant that it was on, because it caught something because the water's low. So it caught something near a rock. And when I got up and kind of shook it off and moved the raft off and continued going down, and I sat back down, I sat back too far on the tube and it flipped me over. So all I remember is sitting back, flipping over, hearing people scream, and then feeling my head thump up and hit something really hard. And all I can think was hold on to the handles that were on the raft. At least this will get you down. Because if I wouldn't have, I really would have probably hit my, like, I don't know what was the right choice. Even to this day, I don't know if holding on upside down, I had just hit my head on a rock and I'm riding down these rapids upside down. To me, in my head, it doesn't make sense why I didn't hit like 4 or 5 more rocks going down, but I didn't. I held onto the raft, and it pulled. It was able to float me down those rapids to the point where there was no to a really calm point in the stream, and then I was able to flip myself back over and get out of the river and make a walk back up the stream to where they were fishing. And man, it was such a painful walk, in the sense of I felt like this big old baseball lump on the back of my head. And but it wasn't even that, the physical part. It was what dawned on me, that like, I know people die in this river every year. And I still took that chance. And what if I would have lost consciousness? And I was grateful that I didn't, but also really disappointed and angry and frustrated with myself. At the time, I only had two kids. I have 4 now, but it's not only 2 kids. And, I had a wife, and I was like, man, I have so much to lose. Like, what am I thinking? I could have just easily, even from the first rock, lost consciousness, went down the rapids, kind of beat up, and then would have just continued, down and just could have, passed away. And, when you get into the undercurrent, it can be pretty powerful. I don't want to get into all the details of like how, of what could have happened, but that was running through my mind. And I was just so like upset to the point where I was like crying on my walk back up and feeling so disappointed. And in reflecting on this story, as I'm trying to decide on the name for this podcast, yes, Psalms 1, and in correlation to that, this story came to mind. Because at the same time that you can go down those rapids with a river tube, with just a life vest, we always see people going down those same rapids down this river on a professional kayak with a group of people, with a professional instructor. Everybody has a helmet. And that is totally an option. And I get it. It costs something. There's a price to pay for riding down these rapids in a very extremely more safe way. And the correlation came to mind of how I hope this podcast can at least grab some people or touch some people before they're going down the rapids and the streams of life. And maybe hearing some of the things that I have to share, and especially guests and other experts have to share, of the wisdom that they're sharing, that it would be, flowing waters and just wisdom that, hey, before you go down that rapid of marriage, or before you have that kid and your marriage is going to get really, turbulent, at least, hey, I know you don't want to pay everything to go down with, full on professional, but can you at least take this helmet? Take this helmet of a little bit of wisdom and some experience and what to expect, or at least take this life vest, and I'm hoping this podcast presents some wisdom and some lessons and learnings, and I will be learning and trying to make my journey down this stream of life that much more strong and rooted in something that can help me bring myself and my family down this stream of life in a way more healthy, joyful, loving, patient way that is bringing heaven onto earth and experiencing the joy that God wants us to experience, and spreading his just blessings on the world and for our families and loved ones. And so that's the concept. I realized, I needed that. I needed to have, someone to grab me and share some of that wisdom. And I just saw the imagery of how I'm hoping this podcast can also be that for people that are going down these streams of different just areas of their life, experiences and seasons of their life. I'm hoping to share some of that, and other people can. So I hope it makes sense. I hope it's not too far fetched, and let me know what you think about it. I see a lot of connections between the imagery of Psalms 1 of being planted and rooted near streams of living water, and the experience I went through also going down a stream in some waters and not being planted in any kind of wisdom, and nearly losing it all. So what's up next? I could share some. So the new name of the podcast is the Roots and Streams Podcast. I will have a concept logo at best. Again, I'm creating this thing building this thing in the sky while it's flying. Went back and forth with ChatGPT. Have a ChatGPT version. Have your reserves about ChatGPT. I do use it to help me. It's my collaborator sometimes. And I also built one on Canva. I'm not sure about the logo. Yeah, I just have a name at this point. So if you see a logo, if you like it, great. It may change though. I'm going to look into collaborating with some artists that I know and see what we can come up with. But for now, at least there's something there to stand in place. And I do want to go back to that like shirt and clothing idea, at least for myself. I may at least just create something for myself that I can wear. And if people like it, then maybe, I'll create merch or something. I don't know. So upcoming episodes. So, unless things change, and they may, I'm going to have to run with it. Maybe by myself next week, but there is someone coming on with their testimony, and I don't want to give too many details. I know I've shared with a couple people, but just somebody from my men's group that just, man, their story is just very impactful, and I think it'd be really interesting and a lot of lessons in it. So I'm looking forward to him coming on next week. And then the next week after that, I'm looking to maybe have my tribe, my online church group that I've been rocking with for about a year now, that I know I've touched on a handful of times throughout my episodes already. And we might just want to talk about just the importance of community and like how we got started and some things that have been interesting, and how it's important to like share, deep things and be honest, open, and transparent, and how it's really built our relationship. So that's an idea for not next week, but the next week. And that's all I have so far. I'm definitely looking for more guests. If you're listening to this and you have something to share, and it could be, almost anything. And so we'll see. Keep seeing where God places on this podcast, who God places on this podcast. And I'm just checking my notes, seeing if there's anything else that I want to say or share. I think that's about it. Again, this isn't like an official episode. Just thank you, everybody. Really, it's been beautiful. I'm looking forward to keeping this going as long as I can to see where it goes. Right now, I am somewhat of a sabbatical. Not somewhat. I am on a sabbatical, not knowing. I say somewhat because I'm not sure how long this is going to last, and I'm trying to run it as long as God will allow me to see where this takes me. Where this podcast may just in my development on this podcast may lead me to something, or somebody seeing this may have an idea. I am not sure. I am open. So we'll see. And if I get something else, hopefully I can keep this going at least like as a side thing, and I will have most things figured out on how to do them and keep it running efficiently and, not too much time needed. But in closing, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. My heart is just filled with so much gratefulness from the support of this podcast, the support of my wife for supporting me during this season, my family and friends just reaching out and supporting me. Grateful to God for just allowing me to survive. Honestly, I was revisiting that moment and of going down that stream and hitting my head, and just thank you, God, for allowing me to survive and to be able to have two more children. And it is just a blessing, and my heart just feels so grateful. And happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Enjoy your family and enjoy friends and loved ones. I hope you have somewhere to go. And just thank you. And happy Thanksgiving. All right, y'all. Until next week, have a good one. Peace.